Welcome.
Today, we are diving into a truly monumental work.
Yeah, we're embarking on a fascinating exploration of Robert A. Caro's The Path to Power. It's the first volume, of course, of his epic series, The Years of Lyndon Johnson.
Right. And this book, it isn't just about Lyndon Johnson, as, fascinating as he was.
Oh, absolutely.
It's really about a deeply transformative era for America and specifically for Texas, seen through the lens of, well, one of its most complex and driven figures.
So, our mission today is to unpack the early life, the origins of Johnson's relentless drive, that kind of pathological ambition for power Caro describes.
Exactly. We'll look at the harsh realities that shaped him, those early political tactics he developed, and the surprising, sometimes ruthless relationships that really propelled him forward. Caro just meticulously lays out that groundwork.
We'll start by exploring the Tex Hill country, that challenging landscape, and how it shaped not just LBJ, but generations before him. Instilling that particular kind of resilience and maybe desperation, too.
Definitely desperation. Then we'll track his, well, almost feverish ascent from that humble, isolated childhood, the very first signs of ambition.
Right, through his cunning political moves in college, his mastery as a congressional secretary.
And finally, his first major election victory.
Yep.
And the controversial methods that, frankly, became foundational for his whole career.
It's just striking, isn't it, how these early experiences and audacious tactics became the building blocks for such immense political power later on?
It really is.
Okay, so let's unpack this. Caro, in The Path to Power, he dedicates significant time to the brutal environment Lyndon Johnson grew up in, the Texas Hill Country. This wasn't the urban America of the 1920s and 30s we often picture, right? So what was life actually like there? How different was it from what, most of America took for granted?
Well, it was profoundly isolated and impoverished in a way that's almost hard for us to imagine today.
Really?
Yeah, Caro paints this picture of a place in the 20s and 30s with basically no paved roads, almost no electricity in homes, very few radios, forget movies.
Wow.
The economy was largely agricultural barter, not cash. So families were genuinely cut off from the broader economic currents.
So totally isolated.
For generations, people weren't just poor, they were geographically and culturally isolated from the rest of America. It was almost like a pre-modern existence right in the heart of a rapidly modernizing nation.
And Caro talks about this really cruel trap related to the land itself. What was that about? How did it catch people?
That's such a critical insight from Caro. You see, after a rainy April, the hill country could look, well, deceptively green and lush. Beautiful, even.
Okay.
So settlers would arrive during these brief wet periods, and they'd mistake it for fertile land. They'd think the rainfall was abundant, reliable.
But it wasn't.
Not at all. It's actually an arid zone, prone to these incredibly irregular dramatic rainfall cycles. They'd get blindsided by years of just searing drought. Caro mentions a terrible 7-year dry spell in the 50s, but these cycles were common.
So they get trapped.
Exactly. People would stay, convinced the rain had to come next year because, well, they'd seen it rain before with their own eyes. It was this cruel deception, trapping families in a cycle of hope and despair, tied to land that just routinely failed them.
And beyond the climate, the physical day-to-day life sounds utterly grueling, especially for women. Reading Caro's descriptions, it almost makes your back ache.
It was. His details are so visceral. He describes women, including Lyndon's own mother, Rebecca Johnson, carrying water in these heavy 4-gallon buckets, 32 pounds, from wells hundreds of feet away, multiple times a day.
Unbelievable.
And this work literally bent their backs, made them round-shouldered way before their time. And imagine cooking 3 meals a day on a wood stove during those 5-month-long summers. Temperatures often near 90 degrees and no refrigeration.
So everything from scratch, every single meal.
Every single meal. Leftovers were almost impossible to keep. As one resident starkly put it to Caro, just living was a problem. It was just constant, relentless physical drudgery. That defined their lives.
And yet, despite that incredible hardship, Caro also describes this a deep connection to the land, almost a stubborn pride, right? But alongside that, this intense longing for something better, specifically electricity. It feels paradoxical.
It does, doesn't it? And this raises a really important question Caro explores. Why were these people so neglected, so fundamentally left behind?
Yeah, why?
Well, the power companies, like TP&L, they just refused to extend lines to sparsely settled areas. It wasn't immediately profitable, you see.
Even if houses were close to existing lines.
Even if they moved within 50 yards, ignored. And the hill country's unique geography, the huge distances, the hills, the rocky soil, it was the constant excuse from the utilities. was impossible, they said, to bring services like electricity or railroads.
So while the New Deal was helping farmers elsewhere,
Right, the AAA helped other farmers across the nation. But hope for real fundamental change remained agonizingly scarce in the Hill Country. So you get this potent mix, this deep-seated suspicion of government, born of decades of neglect, but also this desperate, almost yearning hope for modern things like electricity that could ease their impossible lives.
that tension seems crucial for understanding Johnson later.
Absolutely, it deeply informed his political agenda.
Okay, so we've got this stark picture of the Hill Country, immense struggle, isolation. How did this incredibly challenging environment start shaping Lyndon Johnson himself?
Right.
We know his grandfather was a politician but struggled financially. What about his parents? How did their experiences feed into the figure Caro describes?
Caro details their influence meticulously. His mother, Rebecca Baines Johnson, was quite unusual for the Hill Country, a cultured college graduate who loved poetry, loved the arts. She struggled immensely with the physical labor of farm life, but she dedicated herself to teaching public speaking and poetry to the shy local kids, including Lyndon's cousin Ava. She really opened their minds to a world beyond.
And his father, Sam Ely Johnson Jr.
He was politically minded, definitely a driver in his work ethic, but he faced repeated financial ruin, lost big on cotton futures, became deeply indebted. This really impacted the family's standing in Johnson City.
Creating a shadow for Lyndon.
A huge one. Lyndon later felt embarrassed by it, often saying he didn't want to be seen as just Sam Johnson's son. So he learned from both, his mother's aspirations, his father's political side, and their shared financial anxieties.
It's really remarkable how early Caro shows his ambition kicking in. There are anecdotes from his childhood that aren't just revealing their, well, frankly, kind of unsettling.
Oh, definitely. Consider that story about him letting Harold pop his ears for nickels.
Yeah.
When asked if he'd do it 5 more times for another nickel, he'd say yes. Why? Caro quotes him, because he wanted that nickel. It's not just about poverty. It's a chilling glimpse into this transactional view of pain for gain, a willingness to endure discomfort if it served a clear goal. That pattern just repeats throughout his life.
And what about the spankings?
Right. The loud spankings that neighbors observed left no bruises. They knew he wasn't actually hurt. It suggests this calculated desire for pity or attention, manipulating his environment even as a kid.
And then there's that incredible story, him as a 12-year-old on a donkey making that chillingly prophetic declaration.
Caro really delivers that moment with impact. He's at the Albert School, barely speaks German, gets mocked for riding a donkey, and 12-year-old Lyndon just looks at the sky and declares flat out, someday, I'm going to be president of the United States.
And the other kids laugh.
They laughed, said they wouldn't vote for him. And he replies with just astounding self-assurance,
Yeah.
I won't need your votes.
Wow. That's not just ambition.
No, it's this terrifyingly precocious understanding of how power works. That maybe it isn't about popularity, maybe it's about something else entirely, a different kind of influence. It hints at this deep belief in his own destiny and a strategic, almost cynical view of the whole process.
So his college years at San Marcos seem to follow that pattern, don't they? Still the financial hardship, but also this rapid mastery of maneuvering.
They absolutely did. Caro really details the acute financial struggles. He was apparently foundering in a sea of sentences in English 101, academically struggling.
But worried more about money.
His primary worry was tuition. He was genuinely hungry sometimes, remembering wishing for ham, not just egg sandwiches. That period of deprivation, it clearly impacted him deeply.
How so?
Now, he became overtly obsequious to the faculty. Cow-cowing, brown-nosing students disliked it intensely. But then he was overbearing, domineering towards his peers.
So learning to navigate hierarchies.
Exactly. Even if it meant alienating people at his own level, he was figuring out how to play the game.
Yet from that environment, Caro credits him with basically inventing campus politics there. How did he manage that? Sounds like he built a mini political machine.
He just had this innate natural genius for politics, as his brother put it later. He saw the existing White Stars versus Black Stars rivalry. Initially, just social cliques, maybe about girls.
Then saw an opportunity.
Immediately, recognized it as a political opening. He didn't try to win everyone over. He nose-counted. Meticulously assessed who was loyal to whom. Realized he could win by mobilizing a few key players, not the whole uninterested campus.
Very strategic.
Incredibly. Maintained extreme secrecy, even from allies, and he could be utterly ruthless. Caro tells of him threatening a scared girl with exposure of some minor indiscretion just to gain leverage.
No way.
Yes, and he even ripped pages out of the college yearbook to control his own image. It was a blueprint for later. Identify power levers, exploit weaknesses, demand loyalty, control the story.
Okay, so given this intense training ground at San Marcos, what did that mean when he leaped to Washington? As a congressional secretary for Richard Kleber, how ready was he?
It meant he was absolutely ready to leverage weakness, just on a much bigger stage. Richard Kleber, wealthy family, uninterested congressman,
More into poker than policy.
apparently often sleeping off poker games.
Yeah.
So Johnson basically ran the office as his own fiefdom from room 258 in the House office building.
And the mail thing.
Oh, he had an almost mystical reverence for mail. Caro describes him personally answering every single constituent letter during the Depression's worst days. Other offices were swamped, falling behind. Johnson didn't.
Building loyalty back home.
Immense loyalty. He created this direct, unbreakable bond between himself and the people he served, bypassing Kleberg entirely.
And his knack for solving constituent problems, like those farm foreclosures in 33, that seems like a huge turning point in cementing his reputation.
Absolutely critical. Caro details it vividly. This was 1933, farmers losing land left and right to foreclosures. Johnson organized this landmark meeting in his office.
Who was there?
He brought together 67 desperate farmers, people from the mortgage companies, government officials, and he somehow hammered out a plan that saved all those farms from foreclosure within weeks.
That's incredible.
It was an unprecedented feat back then. His district genuinely suffered less during the Depression because he was just so tireless, so relentless at problem solving. People remember that.
So they saw him as their guy in Washington.
He was seen as the best congressman for a district that ever was, constantly working, pushing his staff to their absolute limits. Some physically broke down from the intensity.
And demanding total loyalty.
Complete subservience, calling his male employees son, insisting on being called chief. He demanded total dedication to his vision. He was building his personal political machine bit by bit, relationship by relationship.
It's clear Johnson mastered constituent service, turning that office into a loyalty engine. But his rise didn't stop there. His network just explodes, especially with these key relationships. Charles Marsh, the media owner, and Herman Brown of Brown and Root. How did those alliances reshape his path to power, as Caro calls it?
These were truly Charles Marsh, powerful media guy, loved being flattered, loved giving advice. Johnson became his professional son, always available, always seeming to agree, whatever his private thoughts.
Opening doors.
Crucial doors, including a direct line to FDR himself and Herman Brown of Brown and Root, the contracting giant. Even more critical.
The Marshall Ford Dam project.
That was the game changer, a massive infrastructure project for the Hill Country desperately needed, but it was initially illegal, caught in this tangle of conflicting state and federal laws, a bureaucratic mess.
And Johnson fixed it.
He didn't just find a loophole, he masterminded a legislative bypass. He literally got Congress to authorize what was previously forbidden by law. Then he secured millions more in funding,
Saving Brown and Root in the process.
saving them from potential financial ruin and ensuring the dam got built, bringing that vital electricity to the very region that shaped him. This created this immense, enduring debt of gratitude. Brown and Root became a constant, robust financial engine for Johnson's ambitions for decades.
So with those powerful connections, that financial engine humming, the stage was set for his first really big political battle, the 1941 Senate race. How did he, this relative newcomer from the Hill Country, even contend with established figures like Pappy O'Daniel?
It was just a brutal, no-holds-barred fight, often called the most expensive campaign in Texas history up to that point.
And Johnson had the money.
He had all he needed, as Caro puts it, funneling huge amounts, often through these deliberately obscure routes from sources like Brown and Root,
How'd they do that?
things called legal fees, discrete cash payments, stuff the IRS later looked into. Johnson controlled the distribution, effectively buying support, mobilizing loyalists.
He had presidential backing, too.
Crucial, yes, though covert. FDR wanted to curb Vice President Garner's influence in Texas. So Roosevelt guided exactly how his support should be hinted at without a flat-out endorsement.
Subtle but effective.
Very. And FDR's administration made sure federal projects in Texas were approved only after Johnson was notified. So Johnson got to take the credit, suddenly linking himself to the power and benefits of the federal government.
So enormous financial resources, a bottomless well of campaign cash, plus the president's implicit backing. What about his ground game, those infamous bulk votes? How did that work?
Yeah, this is where Caro's reporting is just eye-opening. Johnson secured blocks of votes from these powerful political machines. San Antonio, the Valley, places where poll taxes were high.
Meaning votes were controlled.
Exactly. Poll taxes disenfranchised the poor, often minorities. So votes weren't always individual choices. They were commodities sold by political bosses. Kerry even mentions them literally tallying names of dead people to cast votes in some areas.
Just blatant corruption.
It's a sophisticated, if, yeah, ethically dubious system. But it wasn't just backroom deals. Johnson campaigned relentlessly, too. Visited tiny, isolated towns, even back in the hill country.
Hitting every creek bed.
Making every dry creek bed bear his car's tire marks, as Caro writes. Spoke to small groups. His speaking style could apparently mesmerize crowds, turn laughter into just silent, rapt attention. He didn't just win over individuals, he captured whole communities, a mix of raw populism and that sophisticated, often corrupt machine politics.
So, pulling it all together then, Robert A. Caro's The Path to Power shows a Lyndon Johnson whose rise was fundamentally paved by this almost pathological ambition.
Shaped by the harsh realities of his youth, definitely, and fueled by a really pragmatic ruthlessness. That early life in the poor, isolated hill country, it instilled this desperate desire to escape and to dominate. Power was the escape hatch.
And what's really striking in Caro's telling is how this ambition wasn't just abstract, right? His ability to synthesize information, spot patterns, connect dots. It wasn't just policy, it was people.
Absolutely. He was a master at cultivating older, powerful men, Marsh, Brown, leveraging their resources, building networks of loyalists from scratch, creating political machines where none existed, and crucially, securing that unprecedented financial backing, basically by any means necessary. It's a raw study in acquiring power.
Which raises that big question Caro leaves us wrestling with, doesn't it? Does this kind of unyielding drive, seemingly without a fixed ideology, willing to do almost anything, does that always lead to the top?
Or is it more a reflection of the political landscape itself, where the sheer capacity to acquire and wield power becomes an end in itself? Yeah.
It's just a compelling portrait of how those foundational experiences, his innate personality, and sheer force of will all combine to create one of America's most impactful and controversial political figures. Definitely something to mull over as you think about what power even means in politics. Is it earned or is it just seized?